so the town did not have to pay for that. That was about $14,000, so.
Nice.
But the license to actually run the assessing software it goes up every year, unfortunately, and I don't have any control of that. It is a 6% increase from last year's expended, FY25 expended costs, so it's 6% up from the 11,750. The other item that I highlighted, it's level funded, but I just want to make note, my professional services line, that's for my property inspector, and also we hire a special appraisal company to do the hydro plant. I can't use my regular, I have to have someone who specializes in hydro facilities. So I'm fairly confident that that number should be fine at level fund, so that's why I didn't change it. And then the other thing that's changed is my dues. So last year, I think there was a little hiccup. Miscommunication. We had to raise it by $35 last year, but it didn't get raised. So my Massachusetts Assessors Association organization did increase their dues. So my total dues increase for 26 is $84, and that covers all three of us.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any questions on that?
Are you on a 3-year or a 5? I can never remember.
I'm on a
5 years.
3-year term.
No, I mean
Oh.
3-year cycle
Oh,
for
3-year.
valuations,
Yes.
or 5 years.
It's just changed to every 5 years for the
Yeah,
actual
okay.
recertification.
Yeah,
Yes.
like I know you usually need a bump up to cover
Yep.
all the.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next reval for Northfield, the full reval is
Yeah.
in 27.
Okay.
Yep.
However, does it go up yearly because of certain circumstances? Because
Yeah, every year is what's called an interim adjustment. So the state makes you look at values every single year, but your recertification is a much deeper dive. You have to, there's just so many different avenues that we have to look into. So it's a really complex process for the recertification.
which is every
Yep.
5 years, as
Yep.
far as it. But in the meantime, taxes do not stay stagnant, do they? I mean,
The value.
the value does not stay stagnant.
No, because it's constantly going based on fair market value, which
Okay.
changes every year.
Okay.
But I'll also get into that a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was overlay. Every year, the assessors do ask for money to go into the overlay. And what is the overlay? So it's a single account that funds abatements and exemptions for any committed real estate and personal property. So anytime there's an exemption or an abatement, the money comes out of this fund. The state requires that we have at least a 5-year average in our overlay account. And it's also the balance, and to make sure we do have enough is part of the tax rate process. So the state keeps a close eye on what's in our overlay and says, you need to increase it. If there's a point where I don't want to get into it too much because it's a long explanation, but the assessors are the ones that control the overlay. And so if we had an excess amount that we did not need, that's when we can release some overlay. It is one account. It used to be by year, but they've merged it, so you just have the funds. I had printed out a little bit of history of what we had requested over the last 6 years. I think you all have had that. When you look at all those numbers, that's not don't add them all up and think that's what we have in there, because every year, again, there's abatements, there's exemptions, and that changes every year. It depends who files for an abatement. And then the exemptions, pretty consistent, but you always have either someone who passes away that no longer qualifies for one, or you might get someone new that now qualifies for it.
So the overlay stays there all the time. You keep adding and subtracting from it. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it's not like free cash where you turn over back into the general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
We have a balance where it's,
You can turn it back.
you can.
If it
You
gets
can.
to
But we have a
excess.
balance where
Yeah.
we are actually, that's the figure that we kind of need.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm getting into the overlay discussion is we recently had an ATB decision commonly done that the ATB finds a middle ground figure. So we need to abate a large sum of money. That's going to deplete most of our overlay, but again, we had to prepare for that because part of the tax rate recap process is you have to estimate what your potential loss is. So that's why these last couple of years, we've been adding money in there to, for liability reasons.
Can I just jump in here for
Sure.
1 second, Beth? I just wanted to say for people who are watching, or maybe some of the board here, so what happens is when people file for an abatement, the Board of Assessors meets, they discuss the abatement. They can grant it or partially grant it or not grant it. If it's not granted, people can file with the Appellate Tax Board. That's what she's calling ATB. And then you go to court, essentially a board, a special board that does this process, not just any court, just this Appellate Tax Board. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you cut a deal. And in this case, the ATB came back with a deal. They said, okay, we're not going to go for either side. We're going to come down with this number. Now, either side can appeal that. The problem is that these take years. They take years to adjudicate the big ones. So in our case, and somebody's appealing the taxes, we have to, if we do give back out of overlay, we have to give the interest because technically we've been holding their money that the ATB is now giving back to them. So the longer you fight a case, the more interest builds. And at some point, you can do the calculation and say, even if we go further with this, if we don't win 100%, we're going to pay interest on whatever the settlement is. So that's some of what goes into their calculation in whether or not to accept a settlement or not. And this is wholly up to the assessors to do this. That's what they're entrusted with. That's what they're elected for.
I just have a quick question, so for public information. Now, this large abatement, so people understand, this is not created from abatements by residential, is that correct? This is a majority either commercial or utility, correct?
Anyone, are you talking about going to ATB?
Yes,
Anyone can go to ATB.
but a majority of it, was it residential or commercial or utilities?
I've only had to sit on 2 ATB cases, this large one and another small one that was applying to be exempt.
Okay, but this was not, I just want to say, it's not residential per se, this was more.
Not this particular case.
Okay,
correct.
I just want so that people understand that
Yes.
this was not, you know, I mean, a great deal of residential abatements.
No, this was
more-
one large entity.
Gotcha.
So we do have other future potential liabilities. Plus I need to account for my senior exemptions, my veteran exemptions, any real estate, personal property abatements. And more recently now we have a HERO Act and a senior work-off program that also needs to go through the overlay. So we need to keep that into consideration when thinking about my annual request for overlay. So what is the HEROES Act? So that was another portion of, I think, an attachment in the email. I wanted you guys just to be able to read it over just so you had somewhat of a background. So what the HEROES Act, the legislature passed in August. So HERO Act stands for Honoring, Empowering, and Recognizing Our Service Members and Veterans. So in order to qualify for a veteran exemption, you have to have a disability rating of 10% or more, and that is determined by the Department of Veteran Affairs. So that's not something that we determine. They can apply for it as long as they have the proof, then they qualify.
Do they automatically send it to you? Or do you, yeah,
The VA sends it
Yeah.
to the veteran provides a
Gives it to
copy
you,
to
okay.
it. Yep. The Board of Assessors is not taking a stance on this. We're only providing facts, and we are leaving it up to the Finance Committee and the Select Board to determine how they want to present it to the town, because it does need to go before town meeting vote, okay? The average amount of the veterans exemption that comes out of overlay is $20,000. The HERO Act produces 2 potential local adoptions that the legislative body will need to pass. And then the passing of these options could potentially double this amount. So we're looking at a little bit over 40,000. So the first clause, it's called Clause 22I, would increase the tax exemption by the cost of living adjustment, which is determined by the Department of Revenue, based on the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. So for example, our current veterans who qualify for a Clause 22 exemption receive $400 off their taxes. If the town accepts this option, and I'm just going to use the example of a cost of living of 5%, that means the veteran would now get $420.
Okay.
Clause 22J, if the town votes to adopt that, that is taking the exemption amount and you can go up to 100%. So that same veteran that qualifies for that $400 exemption could now go up to $800. 25% would be $500, 50% $600, so on. The impact of this is in a way that both exemptions, both clauses can be applied. So what that means is if that veteran who receives the 400, we pass that cost of living adjustment, so that brings it to 420, and then you apply the 100%, so that's now $840. The state does currently reimburse a portion of veteran exemptions back to the town. It's based on the first year that those exemptions were enacted upon, so it's not a full amount. If the town decides to go forward with the HEROES Act, Clause 22I or Clause 22J, the state will not reimburse any of that. So I just wanted to, again, that the potential for that would be up in the $40,000 range. The next portion of what affects our overlay is the senior work-off program. This was initiated back, I think, in 2015 and it started in 2016. The town voted to put in $5,000 to start this. So the senior work-off program is actually, the Council on Aging has an application. You have to fit certain requirements. It's based on, I think, 65 and older. There's also an income and asset, I think, portion of it. They assign a senior who qualifies a job in town, and they work off whatever determined amount that they want. We only had one individual do this for a couple years, and then COVID came, and that individual was actually working in the school. So with COVID, it went remote and limited access inside, so it kind of just fizzled out. So the Council on Aging wanted to start that back up, and they wanted to start it again with the $5,000 to see what the interest is. If they have a bunch of seniors and a bunch of jobs that they can match up, maybe in another year increase it, or if it's not, well received, just leave it at the 5 if that covers it. But that's another fact of just to consider for what needs to be a part of the overlay account. So for fiscal 26, the assessors are asking for $250,000 in overlay. This amount will satisfy our requirement with the state for a 5-year average, and it should cover what the HEROES Act, depending on what you determine to present before the town, and the senior work-off.
If they were to increase it to 100%, would you have to increase your overlay?
The 250 is taking into account 100%. Just because
Okay.
So you're partially using this to rebuild because,
from what I
okay.
depleted, yep.
Yeah, because it's just like a huge increase for a non-reval year.
Yeah, yeah.
If you look at the budget worksheet that I sent you, the very first page, which is your budget summary, under expenditures, line 14 is overlay, and it has always been there when you're looking at it. And you'll see that last year we had budgeted 150,000, and I have put in the 250,000 fiscal 26 request already. Haven't changed anything else, but so there's last year's and this year's. So you will note that it goes under expenditures in calculating the tax rate. Overlay does go on the tax rate, the request for overlay. Just wanted everyone to understand how that works. We always have been doing that. There's always been a request and it's been there. but most people don't pay much attention to it because it just sort of is a nondescript thing. But you, just so you all know, that's where it will factor into the, not that that fiscal 26 request line item is filled in completely yet, but I just wanted you to note that it is on the form, and that's where you will see it when you are looking at the budget, master budget workbook. It is on the first page.
So the abatement that, we are dealing with is from fiscal 22, just to give you a perspective on how long it takes to actually get a decision. So that's why in 20, like the years before 22, it wasn't that high, but anticipating the next few years, that I requested 150, 100, 149.
Any questions on what has gone on so far?
Only question is, obviously, this is going to be an article on the town meeting in May, I assume?
It's in the omnibus.
It's in the,
Oh, it's in, okay, overlay.
not an article.
Okay, all right.
the, see on your sheet.
But the Heroes Act will be,
the Heroes Act, yes.
Yes.
And so there's two articles. So,
Gotcha.
the assessors are leaving it up to the finance committee
Yep.
to determine what they want to, what they feel they want to present to the select board, and then the select board can choose. Obviously, anyone can change it at any time on the floor.
An article
So-
for the senior right off, because they want to change the amount that was voted and the terms from 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was. So that had to go back to town meeting because it was voted at town meeting.
Is that it for overlay? I have a couple more.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the next portion is the interest on that abatement that Andrea had touched upon real quick. So with the ATB decision, the interest associated with that final figure is approximately $89,000.
wow.
So this amount will go on page 2 of the tax rate recap, which is, I gave you a copy of last
Yeah.
year's tax rate recap for another
So go on
explanation, but
26?
it does, this is for 25, but it will go on for 26, yes. So, that would automatically come out from the available free cash. So just keep that in mind, whatever we get for free cash, that interest.
Is that because it's a court judgment?
It's just our, I forget what the term is.
If it's
Debt-
going off the recap, it needs to be
Yeah,
a
debt
court
and interest
judgment.
charges not included on page
Yeah.
4, yep.
A quick question.
Yeah.
There's no further ongoing issues before the ATB currently?
There
or
is.
There is?
Yep.
And are you looking at potentially future also? Any-
Yes, that's also considered in that 250. I have to make sure I have enough the next couple of years.
All right.
So you will notice again on the master worksheet that I was sending you, there, I have put a line way down at the bottom to, under free cash, to add into the total interest for ATV case settlement, $89,000. So right now, all the article requests are in the free cash line item. That doesn't mean you're going to leave them there, but I added the 89 because I didn't want you to lose track of that 89 when you go to choose what you want to fund from free cash. It won't be an article that shows on town meeting floor, but it's something you're going to have to keep in the back of your mind as a calculation when you decide how much free cash you're going to use and what you're going to apportion it for. So I put it on that page on the sheet.
Raise and appropriate, because I always thought.
Court judgments are just part of raise and are just part of raise and appropriate. You just plug it in onto page 2. Where is it usually? Yeah, like under 3, final awards, 2B3, or under other.
We
under
can
2B10.
confirm it. We did talk to the auditor.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we're putting it in the right spot, but I can confirm that.
Yeah, because I'm just,
Yeah.
because like I know I've dealt with court judgments before, and we've
Yeah.
always done it under raise and appropriate under the levy limit.
Okay, no, I
But I
can double
mean,
check.
yeah, I mean-
Because we were just trying to,
Yeah,
when we were getting ready to do the presentation and going
Yeah.
forward, we wanted to know where everything was coming
Yeah.
from, so. But yeah, I will definitely look into that. So while I have you looking at last year's, if you will, this is last year's tax rate recap. So Dan had asked if I can quickly just kind of summarize how the tax rate actually gets determined. So this is where it starts.
Yep.
It's budget season. So you guys work extremely hard and put in a lot of hours reviewing all the budgets and presentations. And then you take your recommendations to the select board. And then you guys work together, and then you have your warrant for town meeting, and it's the townspeople that vote on this budget. So looking at, this is called the tax rate recap form. It's several pages long. In the system, it's 4 pages, but when printed, it's more. The first page is what I'm just gonna focus on. You get your total, the very top, you get your total amount to be raised. So it's $15,358,015.61. And then you take all your estimated receipts and other revenue sources. So you're gonna take off $5,830,752, and you're left with the tax levy. So that is what needs to be raised, the $9,527,263.61. Once town meeting happens, that's when the financial team in the town hall really gets to work as far as the tax rate recap. There's several reports and forms that are always getting turned into DOR. And also in that time frame, the assessor's office, starting in January, is doing their own reports for valuations, getting their valuations all set to submit to the state. The state accepts or approves the values. And then in the fall, we have what's called the tax classification hearing. So that's when the assessors meet with the select board. It's not determined the actual tax rate. It's the select board votes whether or not they want a single tax rate or a split tax rate. So if you do split, usually your residential rates are lower, and then the commercial, industrial, and personal property pay a higher rate. Northfield historically has always done a single rate.
Is there a percentage difference usually between one and the other? I mean,
When you have a split?
yes,
Or
yes.
there's a whole chart that
The
they
whole
can
chart
choose
works
from.
on that?
Yep. So they voted for a single tax rate. So what that does is, after that meeting, I go into Gateway, which is DOR's software program. I put in the single tax rate, not the number. I put in, like, we're doing a single tax rate. And what that does is that takes your levy by class, so the total amount that needs to be raised, and you divide it by the total valuation. And it's a mathematical equation that determines that $13.84 per thousand is your tax rate. So that's how your tax rate is determined. And that
Any questions?
is it.
Seeing none?
Okay,
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Next up on the agenda is the town clerk. I'm gonna have you run that part of it.
Okay. Hi. Hello. You all set there? I don't know if you know all of us. I don't know if you want introductions. Robin,
Robin Van
Lindsay, and of course you know Dan.
Hello.
And again, I'm passing over the reins to the second in charge because of my circumstances. So Gail will be running this part of the meeting.
Okay. Ready to go? Whatever.
Yeah, sure.
It looks like
Ready to
straightforward budget, but please go through it.
Yeah, it is. Not too much has changed. A little bit less money for this next upcoming year because there's less elections, so it went down a little bit there. And I just added a little bit of money to the mileage and dues. I'm attending every conference and training opportunity to get the right amount of credits for certification.
Gotcha.
And your postage looks, probably, I'm surprised you haven't raised that some. Everybody else seems to be having an issue with postage.
Yeah, I did raise it a little bit from previously, and then I was able to buy postage, so we do have probably enough envelopes to get us through. And then for the vote by mail postage, we get reimbursed for that expense.
Okay. Anybody here have any questions?
Not on the budget, no.
Yes, pretty straight.
This
It's
is
very
pretty
straightforward budget.
basic, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, with no major elections next year, I can see why it went down with your registrar's budget. so.
Right.
However, there is a capital request that she's putting
Okay.
through. And I
Yes.
didn't have it here, I apologize for that.
Yes, so I'm still working out information about a sign, LED electronic sign for the front of town hall. So a lot of the budget would depend on the size and the type of sign we wanted to go with. From just gathering information, I think a more basic, like historical sign that fits with the aesthetic of the building. I think maybe something just like this, you know, really super basic. They have a bunch of different color options, either brick or probably white. So depending on how big of a LED screen we wanted and how much message we wanted to be able to display, there's, you know, certain size requirements, how many lines of text you can have. The actual like stonework part of the sign doesn't need to change depending on the screen size of the sign. So it could be less money, you know, depending on how much we want to be able to fit on there.
So what is the bottom line, or what are some of the quotes that you've gotten?
So it really depends on how you want to go with it. Some of the signs just to have the screen not installed were like $2,500, and that's pretty basic. You can only have a few lines of text. These ones here, different screens, I printed off some measurements. So this one would have a maximum of 18 rows of 2.4 inch text. So I know being able to see it, cars driving
Yeah,
by.
that seems small.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't really know who would want to make that like decision, you know, for styling and screen capabilities, but that's really the big part of the
I
budget.
think though, you might want to have it similar to the size, the mortar boards that we have outside. I think those are 3 to 4 inches, if that could
I
be
think
something.
probably at
But that
least
would
4
mean you'd have to have a
inches.
bigger screen to do that.
Or get a screen that can have fewer lines, because these screens, they're all in the medium category. This one can only have 11 rows of text.
And again, people are traveling down the street right now at 35 miles an hour, so.
Right, yeah, so I would say a
11
bigger,
Yeah.
at least 4 inches
Is
of
it,
text.
would it be on both sides?
That's an option, yeah.
Okay, so what is the largest quote, or what can you anticipate as being the most expensive
So
option?
the most expensive sign that I saw was around $6,000. So I would guess it would be 10,000 or under for the sign and installation. And there may be some tree that had to be relocated, depending on where we wanted to put it. One of the companies that I got a little bit of information from, they're able to do all of the permitting and everything as part of it, so that would be easy. I don't know if it would be less or more money going with a different company. I think it would matter how big, you know, like what would be the overall message. I think it'd be important to have meetings and election information, you know, not too much, because like Dan said, people are traveling fast. You can probably only have a few lines on there. So maybe 3-foot screen, you know, 4 feet wide screen. Doesn't need to be massive. We don't want it to be like overpowering Main Street.
And then I think what you showed, it looked like it had brickwork around it.
Yeah,
To
so
kind of go along with the building. Is that a separate contractor that would come in and do that?
so this is both. So you can choose your screen sign, and then, you know, it goes through the material on the inside of the sign, and then there's all sorts of different coloring or materials you can choose
So it
from.
comes with it?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Okay.
The brick too, would that be extra?
I think so I need to get back information, you know, like what style do we want? I'm not sure what anyone thinks looks better than the other, you know, a
Oh,
curve.
that.
Yeah, so I was kind of just thinking maybe like medium-sized curve with 4 or 5 lines of text.
How bright is it? I'm just
So there
concerned
are
about the
ones that are
letters.
dimmable, so
Okay.
that's like styling. We could choose, you know, how bright we want it or how quickly we want the display to change. So the color would be of the actual material, the monument that the LED screen was inside.
And you can adjust the dimming or?
Of the screen, yeah.
Of the screen, yeah, because I was gonna say.
Yeah, so there's a couple different,
Butters complaints.
different software that you could use for it.
Okay.
And it could be controlled, I'm not sure about
Can
it.
it be timed so they'd go off at a certain time?
I'm sure, yeah, and you could probably have it set up to display a message at a certain time, you know, depending on, that would be the software that you choose to run the screen. But this would be to purchase the monitor and have it installed.
Who would program it?
Probably town clerk or town secretary. I mean, depending on the information we want on there, but I would think probably the town clerk's office because we post the meetings. Anyways, if that's what we're gonna be using it for.
Because
mostly.
they're also gonna be using it for like Parks and Rec information or?
I don't see
Or,
why not, you
yeah,
know,
or-
if it's like a scrolling message,
Yeah.
because they do have that little white sign
Okay.
out front, and
Yeah.
the CPA did have a green sign that was about to get taken away with the wind. So if, so if we were going to, then yeah.
So it probably would be something that would get scheduled for the week that would be put on there, so on Monday, these are the meetings going on, Tuesday, these are meetings going on, is that what you're
I'm sure,
anticipating?
I'm sure, yeah, we could have it, you know, so it just says, you know, Monday this, or tonight, or upcoming. I'm sure there could be several different messages that could be posted.
Okay, we tried this a few years ago, and one of the things that we ran into is the Historic Society. Have you contacted them, talked to them about any of this?
Yeah, so I emailed Beesh and asked for pictures of a previous example of a sign. She said she would get back to me on that. Just driving up Main Street, almost all the houses are white. So I think, and there's a little bit of white detail, you know, in Town Hall. I think just a simple, clean, white, smaller, or brick, you know, nothing flashy. But I'd be happy to give a few different companies whatever information we have from the previous sign or ideas, you know, do whatever looks best.
The other issue here is that obviously when you put the sign in front of Town Hall, depending on the brightness and its physical size, I think that you're gonna have to consult with Chief Hall from the police department, because the reason I'm saying that is if it's bright, you're heading northbound. Not far away is a crosswalk. So the issue here is if they're looking at the sign and distracted by that, you have to decide, is that sufficient space for a person to look at it and then look forward? And because it's a very short distance from that to the crosswalk. So somebody could be paying attention and not see, and that's not one of the signal crosswalks.
Yep.
That's just a standard signage crosswalk.
Very true, yeah.
So I think that, and the other thing is, I don't know if Mass DOT may have something to say about that also.
Because I think where they're thinking about putting it, it would be between the sidewalk and the road. So it would be within the Mass DOT's property. So they would have to go through that also.
I'm just making sure
And we
that
were
if
talking a
do
little
it,
bit
we-
about that, yeah.
It's important for the safety issue, for distraction. It's not so much if you're going southbound, but northbound, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
That's why I think you should obviously consult with Chief Hall.
Yeah.
And you, obviously, the historian, I was gonna ask the same thing you did. So that's
Yeah.
my only concerns there on that.
Yeah, and low enough so people pulling out of Town Hall would still.
Correct, that's the other thing is that the
Yeah.
exit is behind, especially if you're going northbound, the exit's behind it, so you don't wanna have a blockage there of
Right.
the view. So I guess, like I said.
You might have to be back further than you think because of that pulling out from Town Hall
Correct.
and looking either north, looking south.
Either direction, yeah.
You could block your view too.
Yeah.
So you have to be placed strategically, I think,
Yeah.
to eliminate those issues.
Correct, yeah, and I think that maybe whoever we go with, you know, if this is something we do to have the design and installed, they might have input about, you know, how far they can put it, you know, for snow plowing and things like that. You just don't want it to be a hazard, so,
Okay.
yeah,
Any other
That would
questions?
be great to have.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, you know more with the lights and stuff. Everybody all set?
I'm all set.
And again, like I said, tell everybody else, we are a recommending group. I usually say that in the very beginning. We will take all recommendations, and if they're justifiable, we will take them to the select board and we will hash out what they will put on the warrant. And again, all the information that gathered and we recommend is 100% voted on by the people at Town of Northfield.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Next on the agenda is additional anticipated legal expenses. But before I go on, I'm remiss. We have in the audience, could you please identify yourself, sir?
Mitch Jenkins, 5 Main Street.
Thank you, Mitch. Are you here for any specific reason?
No, just to kind of learn what's going on and figure out.
I appreciate that.
Wish we had more people like you.
So Andrea, I'm going to let you kind of chime in on this, the additional legal expenses that we might be looking at or are looking at or need to add to our omnibus.
That's the question I have before you, I'll explain it, and then the question for you is, do we up the legal line, or or should we do this as an article? And here's the case. So before the planning board was a permit, which I'm sure most everybody's aware of, to do for a solar project. The planning board has denied the special permit, and it is anticipated at this point in time, and we could certainly pull this article if it turns out we don't need it before town meeting, that there will be an appeal of that decision. Also, I believe the Conservation Commission had some paperwork, had some material before them, and they also, I believe, did not grant whatever the request. And so there could be an administrative appeal on that as well. So I consulted with the town attorney and I said, because actually the town attorney has been part of this whole process, been to many of the public hearings on following this project. And I said, if there is an appeal, what could we anticipate that we should be putting into the budget or expending for both an appeal and possibly an administrative appeal to the Conservation Commission decision? And his recommendation between the two is $50,000. So
You're thinking that that would be a special article rather than upping the
I think the reason to do it as a special article is because that legal amount could carry over. Litigation there's no guarantee the litigation is going to finish in the same fiscal year. We might expect it could, hopefully. But if you make it in your omnibus, it only lasts till June 30th, 2026, and then it's gone. You'd have to reappropriate it. It's really a decision. The other thing too is this litigation may start before July 1. So you could split this. You could put some of it in the omnibus, or I'm sorry, some of it in an article and pay it out of free cash. That makes that available as of May 5th or whenever town meeting is. I can't recall which day it is exactly, because that money becomes available the minute it's voted out of free cash. Otherwise, if you put it in the omnibus, it's definitely not available till July 1st. And we could be incurring those bills for legal expenses prior to July 1. And we just wouldn't be able to pay them if we were out of money for our regular legal bill. So I think the idea makes sense to make it an article because we might need that money before. And we may have to make it out of free cash because that makes that money available. Again, I can put the article on the list and we can wait and see. If nothing comes of it, you have until April when we actually get the warrant signed to reevaluate this. I just wanted to put it on your radar screen that I'm formulating the articles all over again because we've had other requests, and putting all these new things in so that when you see this show up, that this is the reason that we're going to be asking for additional legal funds for this coming year. We'll know in the next several months, I would imagine, next few months, whether or not there's actually going to be appeals to either of those. And if there's not, obviously we don't have to fund this. But if there is, we're going to have to fund some additional legal expense.
So the other thing comes to mind as far as we do have a fund now for a legal fund for, is that around $50,000 or how much is our normal legal?
At 40.
40, okay.
We've pushed it every year for the last few years. And having said that, there's been a lot of call for the lawyer to attend more complicated things, including these particular filings for special permits, for this very reason. They're very complicated and you need your lawyer involved so that you're trying to make decisions that are defendable, defensible, and the lawyer is up on what is happening if you do end up having to go to court over them. So it's just
Would it
not
make sense, though, that if a process started before town meeting, as far as that, you could use the town's legal funds and then replenish that through town meeting? Or, again, if.
Well, we would have to use the town's legal funds,
Yes.
if that happened. Just know that there's also ongoing other legal issues that we use that fund for. So I'm thinking by May, if we do find ourselves in a situation where there's a legal case, the town's legal fund isn't gonna make it till June 30th, just on normal
Okay.
legal funds.
Okay,
Plus the additional.
All right.
Because there's a lot of the funds up front on the legal case. That's when you're gonna bring in, discovery, you're gonna bring a lawyer here to write and respond to motions, respond to the complaint when it's filed. There's a lot of upfront legal when you get a case from the very beginning. So again, some of this we don't know the timing on it, but I just wanted you to be aware that I'm probably going to put a placeholder in for an article for legal, which can be adjusted if nothing happens. It can be removed, it can be passed over, whatever at town meeting. But I wanted you to understand why I'm going to actually put an article in for additional legal expenses. I think it makes sense to do it. We may need them as early as May.
with some of the things you brought here, do you think there's a reason to upping our legal funds, not this one, but our legal funds, if there's only $40,000 in
General
it?
legal funds?
Yes.
Well, when I started, it was 20. We're now up to 40. I've been watching it. I haven't proposed an increase at this point in time because some of these larger things have gone through. And that isn't to say that next year we may not see additional need for legal expenses. But when I present, I think trying to figure out when to do town hall general originally was going to be tonight, but we're kind of putting it off because of the other. So I'm thinking of if I don't know what'll happen with your next meeting is until the 27th. So I might actually tag town hall general onto that meeting, even though it's fire, EMS and police. Could be a long night, because I want to get the town hall general budget, which includes things like legal, town hall repairs, town hall maintenance, and the potential addition of a town hall building maintenance person, as was discussed with the librarian, all of that into those budget items. And I'd like to get that before you sooner rather than putting it off any additional time. So I think coming back after the Monday holiday, the next meeting on the 27th, might make sense to put it in there as well as the emergency services departments. And we'll have this discussion again. We may know more in 2 weeks. But
When is the deadline for do you have any idea when they can appeal?
I don't know. They are writing. I don't believe they've given them. They have a certain amount of time to give them the decision. So they haven't gotten the decision yet. As far as I understand, it's being written right now. I've been working with Mag, the chair of the planning board, and the town attorney and reviewing all this, and she's working with her committee, and they're going to have a meeting. They have to actually finalize and vote their decision. Once that goes in, then I believe we'll know we'll get a better sense of timing.
So that's when the clock starts ticking.
They will have a certain amount of time to appeal. Now, it could be a fairly lengthy period of time. I honestly don't know the answer to. I don't know whether it's 30, 90, 120 days. I doubt it's that long. Which they could already be working on. I mean, they know what the decision, they already saw the vote, so they know that the decision is a no. They don't have the document yet, but they've been present obviously at all of those meetings, so they know the arguments that are going to be made in that document because they've heard them. So they could be filing within a couple of weeks. It might be, they may have 30 days or 60 days. So there's just no way of knowing at this time. But I should have a better sense in 2 weeks. I'll talk to the attorney. I believe the planning board's going to have a meeting before then to actually vote their decision, and then it'll be final and sent to the.
The reason we realize that this is a definite possibility is the fact that the state of Massachusetts sent back, if you recall, we had two bylaws last year. One was for a moratorium on any kind of permits and that, and the other one was for any other structures. And Massachusetts came back and denied both of those bylaws. So both those bylaws were denied by the state of Massachusetts. They showed the precedence of why it was done and all that, the legalese, that why they basically said, no, you can't, these bylaws can't be upheld. And that's,
Massachusetts
go ahead.
Massachusetts law makes it very difficult to deny applications for solar. You can write whatever you want in your bylaws, but the truth of the matter is you can only do it on a few narrow things: health, safety, welfare, which they may have an argument for here because it was going to be built in the floodplain, which is a little different than some of the other. But the point is, there's also a very strong precedent that they will lose this case. It's just, that's the way it is. Massachusetts, when you deny these permits, they go to court. And unless you have a very strong case on one of those, on those three or one of those three, which they will put their best foot forward, that's an argument they're making. Massachusetts has pretty much decided that they approve of solar, they like solar, they think it's a way to go for the future, and it is very hard to deny solar permitting for any other reason. Can't deny it because you don't like the look of it. You can't deny it because you don't like where it is, unless there's a health, safety, welfare backing to that. And I'm sure that's the argument that will be made, but we just don't know what the courts will decide. They have not been friendly to towns in making these decisions. It's been very narrow, very narrow. So we have to anticipate that they have a good reason to want to fight the denial if they choose to.
Got a couple of questions here, Andre. So the person or the company appeals this to the courts, or do they also have the opportunity to appeal to the Attorney General's office on this issue?
No, they go to court.
They go to court. Okay, and the other thing I want to ask you, if the town votes down the special article for the legal expenses, what happens then?
We'll have to pay them from somewhere else. You have to pay.
Okay, and then the other thing is, if there is a judgment in favor of the plaintiff versus the town, are we open to potential damages for this denial?
No, this would not be a monetary damage case. This is a case of getting the permit. Now, what it could be, what might be the town open to, I don't know how the courts handle these, I'm not the lawyer, might be the conditions under which permit is granted. The court may be able to step in and lay certain conditions that the town might not have approved or may not like because it's before the court and the judge may to do that. It's not like punitive damages. It's not like you didn't give this permit, so we're to charge you, whatever. No, they're fighting in court to get the permit, not fees, fines, or damages monetarily.
Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else have any questions on this? Okay, moving on. Briefings and meetings attended. Last Thursday, I attended a meeting of the three town committees, which included the select board of Leiden, Bernardston-Northfield, and finance committee from the same three towns. We were discussing the new help me out here.
Regional district
Regional
agreement.
And we've come down to, there's just the stickler item that we have on there is to, the school board wants to have capital projects in their omnibus. And we're saying, no, we want capital projects outside so that we can look at them and justify and see what they're all about. And to my knowledge, the last 20 years, we've never, ever denied any capital projects as far as we can see. We just want to see what they're thinking, and justify what they're wanting to build or wanting to add to the school, and we want to have it not buried in an omnibus. We agree with how they go about, basically charging each town for, these capital projects at Pioneer. Okay. All the other schools, which are the 2 elementary schools, the towns are still responsible for capital projects there, unless it has something to do above and beyond that Pioneer wants to do because it's K through 12. We looked at all the aspects of that, and there were some areas that we looked at that we are able to say, yes, we're going to go with that, but we are very adamant that if you don't separate the two, the boards and that were there are adamantly going to come back and suggest they do not vote for the agreement. So that's the stand that we have taken so far. There is a meeting on Thursday night, a general meeting that I will go to. If you want to come, you can attend. It won't be as a meeting because we aren't going to make any deliberation. We aren't going to vote on anything, even if we do have a quorum there. It doesn't matter because we aren't going to have a meeting. But that's the only sticking point. If they want to, concede to that, work it over. The thing that we did ask for is they're saying that DESI does it this way, and we're saying, DESI, come to the meeting. We want to hear it from your mouth, and we want to hear justifications for that. And that's basically where we left it. Every town was in agreement, both the select boards that were there and the finance committees that were there, that this is a issue that we are going to hold fire to their feet about. I guess I got a little carried away the one before because some of the people that were on, either they were on the board or they were people that thought I was somewhat out of line because I explained to the fact that we had never had any capital projects that we did not support, and we just want to make sure that we're looking at what they plan on doing with these capital projects. So that's how we left it. So I just want to make people think that I'm going after the school committee. I am not. I just want clarification, and the towns want to know where their money is going because ultimately the towns are paying for the school. If they can't justify the finance committee, then I don't see how the finance committee can recommend voting for any of their budgets sometimes. So that has never been the case, but at this point in time, they gotta kind of convince us that they're doing the right thing.
I think you also had mentioned if they do put these projects in, how do you know they're not going to back them out for the next budget season?
There is some language in there, but we lose control over, how things are getting done. And it's just, we just want to be very transparent when it comes to capital costs and capital projects, that's all.
Yeah.
Well, I also agree that they shouldn't be treated differently from any other of the town's departments where we have, they come before to justify capital and come before finance and the select board and the townspeople. But for them to do in the omnibus and expecting an exemption where, to clearly justify their capital expenditures, I agree with you. That's unacceptable.
We've always said, your omnibus is one thing. That's how you operate the thing. These other things that you have, these other capital projects in our town, you have a capital project, you separate that out from your budget, and we will discuss the needs for that capital project. That's all we're asking.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'm in full agreement with that view.
Yeah.
Any other meetings?
CPC is also Thursday night, so it's coming up.
Okay,
All the applications are due on the 15th, so
so you'll be there then anyway.
I'll have to go there.
Oh, that's okay.
But you did a marvelous job. I don't think you spoke out of line at all.
I can't make it Thursday. Really fine.
I get feedback that was kind of rude, they said, and I don't.
Oh.
I don't.
Don't
No.
feel any different because I've had the same thing. They've always seemed to, when you're
A different opinion equals
difference
being
of
rude.
opinion, they take
Yeah.
for the slightest thing offense at.
You know,
and
and
they
it-
feel that it's how dare we question them on these issues,
That was a
which we
clear
hold
attitude.
all our other departments to the same standard,
Yeah.
and yet they feel that they're being picked on, which they're not.
No.
They have we have a responsibility, and if we just let them do what they feel like, then we're abdicating our responsibility to the townspeople here. And I agree with that. I said, it's, you know, I've been to meetings here and they're either surprised sometimes that we're even present. How dare we even, you know, show up for a meeting? And, or we are quickly shunted aside and say, you know, basically, you're not involved and basically, and that's the kind of thing that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths and if they're looking again, like a major project down the road, they're starting off on the wrong foot, because if you don't have the support of finance, select boards, it's difficult, especially with their idea of a major school project. They're already going to be behind the 8 ball on this one here. I mean, you start with finance, the select boards, the committees, and the residents, if you're looking to have a project, a major project, and to seek their support, not create animosity.
You know, in the future, what I'd love to see as far as that is the one member of finance committee every town, one member of the select board from every town, and the school committee getting together and working on a budget together, because they have to realize that we have to work with our departments in our towns and be able to satisfy their needs. Every town, there's 3 towns, we pay, our budget is about 54% of our budget goes to the school. That's pretty much the same in all the other towns. Again, they pay a little bit less, but their budget, the biggest part of their budgets are the school budgets, whether Bernardston or Leiden. So we're looking at a good chunk of money from every town, and we're willing to work with the school committee and say, hey, you know, let's do this together. But for some reason, we've lost that connection with them, and I'd like to see it come back and work with them, because obviously, you know, it has to do with the kids. And the argument using the kids as a fallback, to me, the teachers should be getting more money. We should be catering to the teachers more so than to the administration. There's about 250 kids that work at Pioneer right now, maybe a few more, but there's more administrators there than when they had twice that or more than that. So something has to be justified in my mind for their budget coming forward. That being said, you said CPC is meeting on Thursday,
night, yep.
And we'll have some more information from that. Any other areas that we have, anybody has gone to any of the other meetings? Seeing none? Public comments, if you have a comment, we'll give you 3 minutes to come up in front and, you know, say your piece as far as doing that. So,
This is all good information, thank you.
okay, I appreciate that. Correspondence, I think I gave you as much as I could. All the budgets have come through. We sent I think the Thursday night's meeting, I emailed your, Andrea sent it out, so. And again, it's not going to be a meeting where we're going to say we have a quorum, we're here. So if I'm the only one there, that's fine. I will
I'll be there.
represent us.
Then speak up.
The more people that are there, if they'll allow me to speak up, because that's sometimes they may try not to let me speak up. Not going to happen. Anything anticipated? There was something in, okay, there is something that may affect us a little bit that is not anticipated, it's coming up. Our building inspector was hurt and was in an accident. So we've lost our building inspector for the future here. So we're trying to work out a plan with the Franklin County government, and we're trying to, that's going to be a cost, so I don't know if we're going to have to talk anything about it, but it will be something that we'll discuss in the future, but I just wanted to let you be aware that we do not have a building inspector at the time.
We did make a request for a backup for some assistance. We don't know exactly how long it would be. And so they are putting their inspection program, which we are members for electrical and plumbing already. So we've asked if they could do some coverage on the building inspector front, and they're putting together a proposal that I'm hoping to have at the select board meeting. And so I should know by then, if what that's going to entail. So that might end up being a reserve fund request, because
That's kind of what I'm getting at, because that's the only fund that we could use probably to offset some of that cost.
but we'll look and see. I do have some funds in the inspection program line item, we usually put in 500 for electrical, 500 for plumbing. For example, if we're going to do a project at the town hall to pay into that program, because we used to pay those inspectors. We don't anymore. We now pay the program. So we'll see. I'll know more when I know exactly the cost of covering until our building inspector is able to come back.
Anything else that we should discuss? I think we're good. Moving on, our next meeting, because it's a holiday next Monday, our next meeting will be the 27th. If you need to zoom in, we'll make arrangements for that, but we do have a quorum now, so that works out well. We still are looking for one more person. I've been talking to a couple different people. We'll see how that works out. And again, I want to thank you.
The next meeting is generally public safety, so fire, police, EMS. I might change the order that was on the schedule because fire and police might be shorter and EMS might need a little more time. And if that's the case, then I might squeeze in the general town hall budget at the end of that meeting as well to get that before you sooner rather than February 3rd. So
I'm thinking though that EMS might want to have them a little bit later. The only reason I'm saying that is he's going to get into the program, he's going to get into the building over there. If there's something that he hasn't anticipated that he might want to discuss at that time.
He won't be in the building anytime soon.
Okay, all right. So yeah, we'll keep it as is.
At 6 p.m.
6 p.m., January 27th. And since you're back in the fold here, I'm looking for
Motion?
a motion
I make a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting
at,
let's see, 7:03 p.m.
do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying yes. Dan Campbell said yes.
Bernie Brada, yes?
Yeah, Weiss, yes.
Lindsay McCarthy, yes.
Robin Minnemat, yes.
Old habits, we're on TV, they see it, so, but we'll keep it that way.
It's quite all right.
Again, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us. If you want to join us even more,
Come be part of us.